Welcome to Living a Full Life podcast. Join us as we explore health topics that encourage raising healthy children, living a healthy life, and living the best life possible. Now, here's your host.
Welcome to another podcast of Living a Full Life. I'm Dr. Enrico Dolcecore. Another week, another podcast. Thanks for tuning in. This week, we're talking about the specifics of vitamin D. Why this vitamin, Dr. Enrico, and not anything else? Well, because I'm Dr. D and it's vitamin D. It's my favorite vitamin. No, not that simple. All vitamins are important, but the controversy going back and forth with vitamin D over the last 40 years has been kind of comical to watch from the sidelines. I remember as a young doctor, 24 years old in my practice, telling people you need to take vitamin D. I started up in Canada, in Western Canada, where we're sheltered in 6 layers of clothing in the winter, inside trying to stay warm. The sun, I remember, I'd finish work at, 6 o'clock at night. It'd already be dark. Go home. It's dark. Wake up. It's dark. So tough to get the natural source of vitamin D, which is the UV change in the skin, in the melanocytes in our skin that change and convert vitamin D to vitamin D2, vitamin D3 into the pathways that we now know today and how it works. So let's talk about vitamin D and what it really does in the body. There's 3 crucial things it does. It has a major role in the human body. We need it. And then there's certain sources that we can get it from. So we'll cover all 3 of those topics in today's podcast, and we'll make it digestible and easy for you to absorb. Wow, that was a bunch of puns all in one. That was my best one ever. Perfect. All right. So vitamin D is involved in many different pathways. The one that the literature has shown for over 50 years is the calcium absorption pathway. We know that we need vitamin D and magnesium in the bloodstream in a healthy level to absorb calcium. Now, how does calcium get absorbed? We eat it through our food, we digest it, we absorb it into the bloodstream, and then it's got to be transported to the bone. That's primarily where calcium goes. And believe it or not, our heart uses quite a bit of calcium as well as the ion pump exchange pathway, the energy that it uses in cellular function. So calcium plays a big role in this, but the way it moves is transported through a combination and a pathway with vitamin D. They got to tag team this like Macho Man and Hulk Hogan, right? So this is how they got to go and absorb things into the bloodstream. So calcium absorption, the literature has been very sound on this, that we need to make sure that we have adequate levels of both vitamin D and calcium to help stimulate these physiological functions of calcium. That what we do. So the next thing, because of calcium absorption, I kind of led to number 2. It's bone health. So with vitamin D, we get the calcium to where it needs to go into our bones, and it helps sustain and maintain good bone health through our lives. Vitamin D deficiency early on, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, just with the settlers moving across the ocean and all that, and all those stories that we heard from all the travelers that came across. I went brain dead there for a second. I can't remember any of them. Jacques Cabot, and all those guys that came across. They had conditions like rickets, or osteomalacia in adults, where there was just bone deficiency or calcium deficiency in the bone, which would lead to rickets and bow legs. And so we know this from there, and we know that vitamin D, and they started bringing fruit back and forth, and they understood that vitamin D or vitamins in the fruits were important when doing long 3, 4, 5 month voyages on boats. So that was the whole point there. So bone health, we know that from the literature as well. Now, here's where the new cool stuff is all about. Immune system regulation. We now know that vitamin D plays a monumental role in immune system, helping to regulate both the innate and adaptive immune responses, both innate and adaptive. So adaptive is when you're trying to fight something and your immune system is keeping up. You don't get much symptoms and you kind of get through it. And then when it's not adaptive, you get really sick and you get sinusy. That's what it helps with in that whole point. It has a multi-inflammatory properties that play a role in reducing the risk of even autoimmune disease and infections. So this is where the new literature is going, and it's very sound so far. Cell growth and differentiation. So it's even important for the growth of our cells. Vitamin D plays a huge role in there. From the proliferation to differentiation in various tissues and organs, all cells in the body require vitamin D. It may have implications in prevention of treatment of certain types of cancer and influencing cell cycle control and apoptosis, programmed cell death. So it is intricated in so many different things. And you can say the same argument, say, Enrico, well, what about vitamin A? Doesn't vitamin A play a major role in our bodies as well? And absolutely, that's true too. But vitamin D plays crucial roles across so many different systems in the body, from the nervous system to the immune system to bone, circulatory, heart, plays such a huge role across so many different things. That's why it's so important to make sure we're not deficient in vitamin D. Number 5 is muscle function. Vitamin D plays so much role in muscle function and strength. So adequate levels of vitamin D may help reduce the risk of falls and fractures in older adults by preserving muscle mass and function. This is what happens when you study things repetitively and actually do science. Science, it never ends. There's never a conclusion or a fact. If there ever is, it becomes a law. And there's only a few laws of the universe. The law of gravity. There's no law of vitamin D because there's so many theories around it. So science needs to continue going. And because of the study of bone health and calcium, we now know, well, holy smokes, there's a whole different side of the coin of why vitamin D is so important in preventing bone breaks. And it wasn't as simple as, well, yeah, if you have stronger bones, they're going to be harder to break. That's one role. The other role is that it keeps lean muscle mass strong. It keeps whatever lean muscle mass you have strong, which maintains balance as we get older, maintains movement. We can walk up and down the stairs on our own accord. These little things that reduce the risks of falling in itself, yet alone breaking a bone. So both muscle and bone. Isn't that cool? I think that's cool. Cardiovascular health. Some research suggests that vitamin D may have beneficial effects on cardiovascular health, including regulation of blood pressure, reduction of inflammation, and improvement of endothelial function. Great. That's newer research, 15 years old. I mean, it's newer. By the time research gets done and we read it from a clinical perspective, it's been in there for at least 10 years. It takes 10 years to get to the doctor's tables. My wife and I are nerds, so we read all the new stuff, but new stuff needs to be tested before we throw it on a podcast and tell you, hey, go run out and get, vitamin K and start drinking it, because, well, we don't know where the research goes with that. So we don't say that. But this is 10, 15 years old, the cardiovascular health. And the newer stuff is now brain function and gene expression. So the brain is mood regulation. Vitamin D, there's evidence suggesting that vitamin D may play a role in mood regulation and mental health. They see this with people that are vitamin D deficient, have an increased risk of depression and mood disorders. This could be a cofactor in some of these mood disorders and depression, where people are just malnourished, tired, lethargic, not sleeping well, depressed, right? They're already depressed. Then they don't sleep well even more. Then they get anxious, and then they don't sleep well. It's just this negative feedback loop. So if we're not eating well, not sleeping well, everything's going to get depleted. So it could be a cofactor that's found across this. But people with depression and mood disorders have a tendency to show lower vitamin D as well. Is vitamin D going to be the cure to mood disorders? No, we can't make those types of links. Causation and factors, right? We can't do that. But it is shown in the literature to show that mood regulation can be there as well. And I've noticed over my 17-year career that people that have good vitamin D levels, or the people that we help get into a normal vitamin D level, do better with their mood. That's kind of neat. And lastly, gene expression. This stuff is what I love, but I'll get carried away, and this podcast will be 2 hours long. Gene expression. Vitamin D acts as a transcription factor, regulating the expression of numerous genes involved in various psychological processes and physiological processes throughout the body. I'm going to just stop there, because that's the new frontier of the science for vitamin D. So there you go. Hope I wowed you a little bit with those things, but the role in the body is so important. It's essential for maintaining healthy bones. It helps the body absorb calcium from the diet. It's important for bone growth, development, maintenance throughout life. It plays a role in regulating the immune system, muscle function, and cell growth. That's what you need to walk away with today from this podcast. So why do we need it? Vitamin D deficiency, that's what we're talking about. We need it so we're not deficient. Vitamin D deficiency can lead to various health problems, including bone disorders like rickets in children, like I told you. Insufficient levels of vitamin D may also have linked to increased risk of certain cancers, autoimmune diseases, cardiovascular disease, and mood disorders like depression. So that's why we want to be maintaining it, because it plays just too many roles across too many different platforms. And if these are just the conditions that we've learned about, imagine how many more we're going to learn about. So here's the most important thing of the podcast. How do you maintain good vitamin D? The primary source of vitamin D naturally is sunlight. When the skin is exposed to sunlight, it synthesizes vitamin D from the photons to our skin. The skin, the melanocytes absorb it, and then it synthesizes that energy into vitamin D. It's so cool, the pathway, how that happens just innately. However, factors like where you live in the world, the closer to the equator you are, probably the more sunlight you're going to get, right? Season, time of day, cloud cover, skin pigmentation, and the use of sunscreen can even affect your vitamin D, right? So it's a double-edged sword. Well, we need sunlight, but we also need to wear sunscreen because constant sun damage can lead to melanoma and skin cancers. So we got to play a role in that. We got to protect ourselves from the UV, the UV that supplies us with life. So the goal is 20 minutes of direct sun exposure every day, 365 days a year, to your entire body. Not wearing pants and just taking your shirt off, and not, in a one-piece swimsuit. That's not enough. You got to do more. And if you expose yourself to more than 20 minutes of direct sunlight, especially here in Florida, you put yourself at risk of a sunburn, which you don't want. See what's going on? So that is why we need to fortify and supply our nutrition with vitamin D. Apart from sunlight, sources of vitamin D include fatty fish like salmon, mackerel, tuna, egg yolks, so don't just eat the egg white, fortified foods like dairy products too. They put the vitamin D in there. And if you listen to our old podcast, we don't like fortified food and processed food because it's really not nutritious. So that's the problem there. So eating whole foods is the best way to do it. So folks, long story short, you need to have a vitamin D supplement. It's got to be liquid form because that's the highest absorbability. And you got to be taking about 5,000 IUs per day. There you go. You had to listen to the whole podcast to get that last tip. Saved it for the end. That's what you got to do. That's been it. And I'm not tooting my own horn here, but for 17 years, I've been saying that. And I was the first doctor in my area to tell people to take 5,000 to 10,000 IUs per day back in 2008. I remember this. They're like, I'm taking 100. This was 100 or the 500 milligram capsules that they were taking. I'm like, you need to take 10 of those, 5,000. And they're like, what are you talking about? And we show them on their blood work. And it was like pulling teeth to get a primary care physician to send them for vitamin D at that time. Oh, vitamin D. Now they do it all the time. So I guess I am tooting my own horn. But we were saying that from that long ago because of the research that was there. It was 10 years old by then. In 1995, this stuff was coming out. So by the time I was in practice in 2007, 2008, 2009, it was 10 years. It was in the literature, and we're at the front runners. And ever since then, we stay at the front of literature and evidence-based science because that is what you need to know to do. And that's it. That's it, folks. That's so 5,000 to 10,000 liquid form. You can buy this stuff anywhere. People still get confused about D2, D3. You can't buy vitamin D2 anywhere. There's no such thing. It's all vitamin D3. So whatever vitamin D you buy, it's all vitamin D. Please do not buy your nutraceuticals online, especially like wholesalers like Amazon.com. Do not buy it. You cannot find where the source is coming from, where the distributors are coming from. You may not be getting it. And there's an uptick in fraudulent Chinese product here in the United States, from electronics all the way to nutrition and food. It's a major problem right now. They're getting around things. They're just copying what labels, putting them on bottles, making them look identically the same as the other companies. And they're not. The company's like, listen, we don't do that. We don't ship it like that. So so you don't know what the source is. Unfortunately, nothing against China, but I mean, there's no way the FDA can't cross-reference this. So we don't know what we're getting. Please do not buy online. If you're going to buy online, find the reputable sources and you co-manage it with your doctor. Like usually the doctors have to get a license or have their license used on something like FullScript or BioDesign or some type of platform where a doctor signs off on it, and then you can have a link where you go into your portal and you can order anything you want, and your doctor can see it at any point. So if you ever have a side effect or if you ever feel something, the doctor can be like, oh, why'd you order all of those? You didn't need those three things. Stop taking those or whatever it is. So that's my best advice, or just have somebody help you. That's the best thing. But vitamin D is safe. Go to the shelf, go to the store at any of your Whole Foods or organic stores, buy vitamin D. You're in good shape there. Stay well. stay healthy, get your vitamin D. Healthy levels, if you ever get your blood work, is 50 to 70. 50 to 70. The medical range is 30 to 90. 30 to 90. Okay? When you look at that number that they give you. So 30 is deficient. Now, medically, if you come in at 32, they're going to say, nah, you're okay, but you're not. You're well under 50. You're deficient. You're deficient. That's the deficiency range. Under 50 is deficient. Under 30 is medically deficient. Your medical doctor sees you at 20. They now have to prescribe you a shot. And I think a shot's 100,000 IUs. Boom. And you might have to do that shot every week for a few weeks to get your level up. This is what they do for B12 too. If you're chronically low B12, they tell you to get a shot because a shot goes directly into the bloodstream. So that's what will happen medically. Otherwise, if you're under 50, you need to be taking 5. I would up it to 10,000 for a while until you finish that first bottle, and then get to 5,000 after that. That's my tips. Those are safe tips that I can say on a podcast without any slack here because it's perfectly safe for everyone. Children, you just elevate it up to 5 years of age. So at 1, they can do up to 1,000. At 2, they can do up to 2,000 IUs. At 3 years old, they can do up to 3,000. That's just a nice little guidance for them to get them up to the 5,000 IUs per day at 5. So then that's why we do liquid. You just drop 5 little drops on the tongue. The whole family can do it. A bottle lasts us about a month. And they range between $14 and $24 for vitamin D, depending where their sources come from. And that's your investment for vitamin D. Pretty easy for most people to do. Have a great week. Stay healthy. Take care. God bless.
Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Living a Full Life podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. That helps others find the show, and we greatly appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.